Good evening, folks. This is Andy Pedraza with Special Effects Academy, and we're on the start of the week session for the Forex trading for 2019. As usual, we will go through our standard agenda. Result of the prior week, our currency strength meter for the last week and last 30 days. Calendar of fundamental announcements for this week just beginning, a look at the daily charts on the major pairs, any setups we see in progress, and a few words in conclusion. Start off long-term, actually we did have change this week, not very apparent from open trades, but two of our trades closed out at profit, so we've recovered significantly from our most recent drawdowns, or nearly back to break even on the account. We're 5% down at this point. We have two open trades with the pound JPY and the pound CAD, both trading into pound weakness, and both of them are at break even right now. So we're still waiting for that next move out of the pound. Intermediate term account was almost perfectly flat. We're up like half a percentage point, or maybe even a quarter of a percentage point from where we were last week. Had a couple of trades close out at profit, and we still have quite a number of open trades remaining. Some of them at profits, some of them at loss. We have a very small bin deficit right now on these trades, not significant, and again, there's quite a number of them that have already turned around and are starting to move in our favor. So no change there. If you look at last week's results, I think it was 34.20 something. We're now at 34.55 growth. So a little bit of a move in our favor, but nothing significant. And on the we did have a small drawdown this week. We started off quite well with at least one trade that moved very much in our favor with that Euro New Zealand, with actually the New Zealand interest rate decision and employment numbers, I think, came out as well at some point. Actually, it was the employment numbers. So we had the Euro New Zealand give us quite a nice win, but we also had a losing trade with the pound dollar. Just went in the opposite direction, and well, almost perfectly flat, but we did have a drawdown of 2% on this account for the week. Notes and opportunities for not show, as they said, was a flat one, though a couple of winning trades did close out on the long-term account. Other than that, it was pretty much a, well, we could have taken the week off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Looking at our relative strength meter for the past month, we can see that silver has been the overall loser, closely followed by gold. Though looking at last week, we can see that both silver and gold were staging recovery. So volatility low last week, 1.75%. The big loser was the Aussie dollar, followed by the dollar, and most of the dollar's movements were toward the end of the week, Thursday into Friday, towards the close of market. The CAD also did not fare too well. The Swiss was pretty, Swiss, Euro, JPY were pretty much middle of the pack. Big winners was the Kiwi, and again, this was on the backs of their the labor report coming out of New Zealand, which did weaken the Kiwi to some degree, and then it just popped back into its prior range. Other than that, as I said, really a very quiet week, not a whole lot of movement. Even the dark colors on the weekly RSM are just indicative of 1.75% at its deepest. So not a whole lot of movement overall. And for the last 30 days, volatility also coming down to about 3.5%. The calendar for this week is reasonably quiet, not a lot of things happening. We do have the Reserve Bank of Australia meeting minutes coming out tomorrow at 9:30 p.m., so we'll very likely have an early evening session to kick off the week, so we can look at these meeting minutes and trade our regular evening session at the same time. On Wednesday, we have probably the event of the week, which is going to be the FOMC minutes out of the Fed. Those are usually good for a decent move in one direction or another. That will dovetail with our afternoon session, so we'll have a slightly earlier start that day on Wednesday. And then Thursday at 6:30 a.m., we have the monetary policy meeting accounts or minutes out of the European Central Bank. Early morning fundy, the only one for the week. Other than that, we have a pretty relaxing schedule. With that, we move on to our chart, starting with the WTI for oil. It is still playing around towards the upper levels of its current resistance, around the 57 and change, actually closer to 58. It did break out on Friday and then pop below almost immediately. So again, oil is pretty much caught in a sideways band. And we're seeing whether it's going to have the strength to break out in either direction, strength or weakness to break out in either direction. Not a whole lot happening that would move oil in the geopolitical scene. Obviously, that can happen at any point in time, but it looks like oil is having a quiet period right now. Moving on to our euro dollar. It did break support this week, but then we had, as I mentioned, the dollar significantly weakened on Thursday into Friday. So it did have a pullback towards the end of the week, almost matching the Ichimoku cloud. So it did burst out from the bottom of the cloud, and then on Friday it just popped back up on a very thin cloud at that point in the chart. So this is one of those where I'm very eager to see how the week is going to kick off, to see whether it's going to continue towards the higher levels around the 112, or if indeed this is just a fake retracement before it continues towards the bottom. So it could go either way. I'm still generally bearish on the euro dollar. I think it will revisit those prior lows, but we'll see exactly what happens. With the pound dollar, we can see sort of the same. So it did have a better week, the euro dollar did. So we can see that it started out strong, moving into pound strength, dollar weakness. Then towards the middle of the week, it started popping back down, and then it ended the week at the top, almost where it had started. So a reasonably flat week for the pound dollar, but still it's showing dollar weakness towards the end of the week. USDJPY also showing us how the dollar shifted towards the end of the week. So we had the USDJPY going down into dollar weakness, yen strength, and then contrarian, the opposite happened on Friday, where the yen gave up quite a bit and moved back into the wedge and very close to resistance. So all the other pairs we were looking at moved into dollar weakness. This one was an exception. It actually moved into dollar strength or yen weakness, take your pick. But it's still also a very bearish chart. And this may be indicative of something that we've seen happen before, where the yen acts as a contrarian currency and doesn't move in lockstep with the rest of the major currencies. USD Canadian, after being being weak for quite a while now, it's in probably its biggest retracement in quite a while, hitting some of the outer trend lines. Friday, it finally shifted again. Dollar weakness more than CAD strength, so the CAD is still not out of the woods, but then again, it's still significantly lower than it was back in May. So we're still looking at some CAD strength, even though it is on the daily, at any rate, starting to move more sideways than anything else. I'm still looking at the bottom, and it almost happened a couple of weeks back before that big retrace happened. And put the kibosh on that. I'm still looking for it to revisit the bottom and hopefully to continue going. Some of the levels of support that we can target as well as profit-taking opportunities can be seen better on the weekly, where you'll see if you zoom out that way towards the weekly chart, there are quite on this chart that are, well, at some point, I really do think they're going to be revisited. There is either going to be a shift in the fortune of the dollar, making it weak, or the CAD is going to regain some of its prior strength, maybe a combination of both. So this is a very interesting chart to watch, a very interesting pair. You've all seen me trade it multiple times throughout the year, and it's mostly always so The only problem is it does go sideways for significantly long periods of time, and you just have to wait it out until it pops above resistance or below support, whichever one it's doing at the time. USD Swiss is definitely bearish, and we took advantage of that, at least on one of the accounts. We're still looking for that movement beyond the support at the 98.50, which it's getting very close. It ended the week about 40 pips above, and mostly because on Friday it started retracing back up, but not a significant movement. It actually ended up very near where it had closed on Wednesday. So the movement towards the end of the week was not as unfavorable to the USD Swiss as we saw on other pairs. And again, we're still waiting to break support so we can grab a bigger chunk of profit. But it has been sideways for, I'm going to say, since August, July. It's been trapped in the current sideways channel, and we're waiting for that breakout. Aussie dollar, very bearish week for the Aussie dollar, with again on Friday the dollar retrace, giving it a little bit of a retrace, a little bit better than halfway up Thursday's candle. So it still ended the week nicely down. This is another one that we traded successfully. And well, again, another one we're waiting for it to revisit the bottommost levels of support and hopefully break past them. That's not a given at this point. I think that the US dollar is in a very, very sensitive position where it could significantly weaken if any bad news comes out. And in the US, of course, we've got all the impeachment that we got the trade war still going back and forth. So there's the only good news for the dollar really is that the economy continues to be very strong despite all these threats that are on the horizon. But if any of these multiple threats that could affect the dollar actually materialize, we're going to see a significant drop in the dollar. So you got to be careful trading the dollar pairs, because that can happen at any point in time and there will be no warning. It'll simply happen, and I'm not going to say it's going to be a black swan with a 1,000, 2,000 pip movement in a few seconds, but it may definitely cause a breakout above resistance, below support, depending on which way it goes. Dollar, very the Kiwi dollar did go up mostly for the week, most of it on the back of that Sunday. So on Wednesday with their labor report, and then Thursday, Friday, it sort of started going sideways. It dropped one day, went back up the other. It's still in a very narrow, a very tight sideways range. We're still waiting for it to break out towards the bottom. We do have an open trade on the intermediate account on the Kiwi dollar, and again, I'm bearish. I'm extremely bearish on this chart, but I'm getting a lot more cautious now that the dollar is showing signs of weakness across the board. Movement towards the end of the week, and again we caught most of that movement as well, with a very slight retrace on Friday. So we're waiting to see if it does have the strength to break out of the bottom of the Ichimoku cloud. It's a very thin cloud where it is right now, and of course ultimately we wanted to revisit the very bottom of the chart at the at the 88.30, and preferably to keep going. You can see this chart was nicely bearish from the very top back in April. It's been almost a complete collapse with its steepest point in September. But even before that, it had been going sideways. So we can see that resistance level at the 91 has been hit from the top twice and from the bottom also twice. So now we have that as major support resistance, currently below it. And of course, the bottom of the sideways range being very close to our profit target towards the mid 88s. Still bearish on the chart. I'm still very confident that the Canadian has more upside than the Australian does, but of course we'll have to wait and see what the market actually does. Euro Swiss, we took some nice profit out of the Euro Swiss towards the end of the week. You can see the retrace that happened Thursday into Friday. We got out somewhere along that retrace, took our profit, and I would be waiting for the next opportunity to yet again go short. I don't have any long, or I don't see any long opportunities on this pair. Yes, it could go back to its resistance at the 110.50, but I don't think it will have the strength to go much beyond that. I think there's more downside to the Euro Swiss than upside at this point. And again, obviously waiting for the week to begin to see which way it starts bouncing. I'll like to give it about 24 hours. So the market is open. It's been open for an hour. And I will reassess most of these pairs tomorrow in the evening session after the first 24 full hours of trading to see if we have any directionality rearing its head for the week. Euro pound still very, very perfectly flat, though it broke out towards the bottom this week, very, very slightly. So we can see that it broke the bottom by about 25 pips and pretty much stayed there. So we can call that a lower level of support right there where price ended for the week. It is still following that inner trend line quite nicely, so it's still definitely bearish, which means pound strength. But fundamentally speaking, I don't think we're going to see a lot more pound strength between now and the end of the year. And with the elections in the UK scheduled for about 3 weeks from now, I think there's more side here than anything else. Of course, the euro will also be affected by both the election and by Brexit. So this one could, in theory, continue sideways. But in general, for the pound pairs, I am looking for a weakness play in the next week or three that we will take full advantage as much as we can if and when it happens. EURJPY, nicely bearish, hit the trend line, and then we had that retracement on Friday. We also, I forget if we got taken out of our open trade on the EURJPY on that retrace or if it's still open. I'm not very good at keeping track of the open trades other than when I'm looking at them. They tend to take care of themselves. I'm usually pretty good at adjusting stop losses and putting trailing stops in place, so I don't have to micromanage these. But we either got taken out at some level of profit last week on this pair, or we still have an open trade that should still be at profit, either or. And of course, if we did get taken out, I will be looking for the next opportunity to go short. This is another of those currency pairs where long is not in the cards for me at any rate. Obviously, you're all free to disagree, but I am looking for short opportunities on all these euro pairs. And EUROCAD is no exception. I still think that the CAD is overdue for a bit more movement into strength. But this pair in particular has been very sideways. It found the bottom. It's obviously found the top to its most recent movement as well, even though I've not indicated it here on the chart. But you can take the 147 as its upper level of resistance currently, and I'll add it to the chart for next time. But we are in sideways movement with a expected bearish breakout, or at least I expect a bearish breakout. See how that comes out. But on the euro in general, I'm dovish on the euro. I think euro weakness is what's going to be in the cards longer term. And now we get to our mid-pound pairs. Pound JPY almost perfectly flat. It has been flat since early October, so we're going on a month and a half now of essentially no movement out of pound JPY. We have open trades on it, especially on the long term. I think we have a long running one, but we're still waiting for that breakout towards the bottom. Again, on the pound, I'm trading it into pound weakness. That's my bias. It's a personal bias, but based on solid fundamentals and even a little bit of technical analysis there. So I am expected at the very least for it to go down towards that trend line in the middle of the Ichimoku cloud. And that alone will already give us a nice chunk of profit. And if it keeps going, it's just a bonus. AUDJPY hit the trend line, bounced up. I think we took some profit on this one as well, or maybe that trade's still open, but we are looking at a bearish position on the AUDJPY. And I would still expect it at some point to break that trend line and head into the Ichimoku cloud. There's not a whole lot of positive coming out of Australia. We've got those meeting minutes tomorrow, so in about 24 hours, we will have an Australian fundy that may be the kicker. It needs to break the trend line. We'll see. Either way, we'll be trading that one live. But longer term, I think this is a safe short, and I would expect it to revisit at the very least the bottom of this chart you see on your screens. Euro New Zealand, a nice drop in strength. And this is the one that gave us a nice chunk of profit on the short-term account. So we can see it moved into Kiwi strength, which almost, the next day, I was going to say almost immediately, it did start retracing that same day, but then retraced on the retrace and ended up very close to the bottom. But the next day had a huge movement back up, about 2/3 of the way towards where it had been before the fundamental announcements. And then Friday kicked in with a bit of a retrace. So it is still following a downward trend line. It has not reliably broken support. So we're still waiting on that. This is another chart where I think we're way overdue for a trip all the way to the bottom. And in this case, we're talking 1,000 pips is that distance from where it is right now to the very bottom of the chart. So I'm very eager to catch that drop, but it will do it on its own time. What I do think is that the top is probably a level of resistance. It's not going to be broken too easily. So I don't think there's a whole lot of risk of it breaking out towards the top. Of course, it can do whatever it wants to do. The market is always right. But I do think this is one of the better opportunities for a short, even a long-term one where you set and forget it, just has to be given a very wide stop loss. Pound Canadian also hitting resistance there at the top for 3, 4, 5 times now, if we count every individual candle. And again, I'm expecting pound weakness, and I am expecting CAD strength, though this is another candidate for a trip to the very bottom. But if we do see a breakout towards the top on any good news coming out of the UK, I will trade it up. At the end of the day, I'm more a technical guy than a fundamental, though my fundamentals will always provide me with guidance for the trading. But a breakout is a breakout, and I would trade it up if it happens. But my bias, as with all the other pound pairs, is going to be into pound weakness. And last but not least, our pound Swiss, same match. It's been very flat. It's definitely found resistance right about where it's at. It's not going much higher than that. And also great opportunities for a short whenever this pound weakness actually comes into play. And again, my bias doesn't need to happen, but I think it is the likelier outcome. That does cover all our charts for this week. Setups I see in progress. Obviously, the pound pairs, it's still slowly weakening, but very susceptible to the news cycle until the general election happens. That's the same message I had last week. It's not going to change. That's going to be the same message you're going to see until we actually have the election on the 12th of December. Other than, the pound may stop weakening, but it is still slowly weakening, in my opinion, as well as on most of the crosses, we can see that happening. USD pairs, the USD continues very shaky, and even though it had a reasonably good week up until Thursday into Friday made it lose a lot of ground. So it couldn't maintain its level for the entire week, and definitely ended on a dovish note. The Canadian, it remains strong, but very reluctant to move much. So it's not giving up any ground. Every now and then we see it take a little bit of a step into CAD strength and then not give that up for a while. But it hasn't done one of the bigger movements, and especially hasn't done what I've been expecting it to do for a while now, which is give us a trip to the prior levels of, or the prior extremes, I should say, of CAD strength against the different crosses. So we're still waiting on that. Swiss, the Swiss pairs are still very sideways, and we saw that on both Euro Swiss and USD Swiss, a lot of sideways action, but it is constantly testing those boundaries and trying to move into Swiss strength. We've been taking small profits because one of these is going to be the breakout, so I will take every trade that presents itself from a technical perspective. but we haven't had a big move in quite a while. We've been taking very small profits along the way, or sometimes small losses, so they tend to even out. But I think we've been more positive in our results than negative with the Swiss pairs. We'll see how that continues. And last but not least, the euro pairs. The euro still very shaky, still very uncertain, still very much waiting for the next shoe to drop. So I wouldn't be trading any of the euro crosses into euro strength, with the possible exception of the euro pound. Everything else, I would expect intermediate and longer term for the euro to give up a lot of ground before everything is said and done. Now, I'm not sure, unlike the pound, I'm not sure that the euro is going to play out before the end of the year. It may just continue sideways through December, and then we'll have to wait and see when in 2020 we start having a decent movement. And that's going to be, in general, other than the pound, a very similar story. The Forex market tends to quiet down towards the end of the year. So we start having sort of the doldrums, a windless, in sailing terms, a windless period where you're just becalmed, waiting for the wind to pick up and move you again. So December tends to be that way. We still got a couple of weeks until the Thanksgiving holiday, which is when the market tends to quiet down. Everybody moves into holiday mode, and then we have the market in general. Sometimes it surprises you, but in general, the month of December is very quiet for trading. And that's it. Review on my final words here, and as always, I pick something that just sparked into my head, either due to somebody's comments or something I saw somewhere. This is a little bit of both. I routinely see ads that are promising those perfect trading systems, the ones where every trade is going to be a winner, and you start with a $500 account, and you have, $1 million by this time next month. I see these as normal, simply because scammers are always going to be trying to scam. So you're always going to see that. You're always going to see the outrageous promises. What worries me a whole lot more is when I see otherwise smart traders, those in this room and those not, who should know better, trying to buy into or develop similar systems. You obviously need a system. There are no ifs, ands, or buts in that statement. It's never going to be a perfect system. Your win ratio is never going to be much better than 50-50. If you're really good, you get up to about 65%. I should say if your system is really good, you're going to get up there. But you're not going to improve on that no matter how good you or the system are. It's just not going to happen. Don't waste the time or the money pursuing magic. Trading isn't magic. Trading is a science, and the ABCs, the basics, the foundation, are risk control. It's not on being right more often than the next guy. Indeed, you shouldn't care what the next guy is doing. Just pay attention to what you're doing. This is not a winner takes all game. Many people can win at this, and many people are going to lose. But you don't need to be the best at trading in order to make quite a decent amount of money. You just need to be good enough. And good enough is going to be based more on your risk control than on your ability to pick winning trades. So final thoughts there is, would you rather be right all the time, or would you rather make money consistently? That's a question you need to ask yourselves. And if you ever see yourself falling into that magical thinking pitfall, slap yourself in the face and snap out of it. So that's it for me this week. Any comments or questions from anyone? Okay, then that's it for today. We will be meeting up a little bit earlier than usual tomorrow. You'll see that in the schedule when I send out my email summary. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of the weekend, and thanks for joining.